I'm going crazy, man. I really thought I was losing my mind. I couldn't believe that, like, everything I had ever wanted, like, I have my house, I have a wife, I have a beautiful son, I own a business. So I had, like, everything going for me, and inside I'm like this shell of a man. Like, I'm empty and I'm miserable, and I feel like the only way out of this shit is, like, to take my life.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, a free safe space for people to share and learn from others' experiences with mental health and addictions. I'm Todd Renabaum, suicide attempt survivor and a recovering substance abuser. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. This week I'm speaking with Paul Nootbaar, and he is a fairly fascinating man. His mental health journey and trauma experiences started, pretty much right from birth. His mother died when he was young. His father was abusive. He grew up in state-ran facilities, and that's just the beginning. I'll let him explain the rest of his story. It's a bit of a longer episode, so let's just get right into it. So without further ado, I give you Paul.
When I was, 5 months old, my mom passed away from a domestic violence incident with my dad. So from the age 5 months to about 5 years old, I was, somewhat raised by him in a very chaotic home. He's always been an alcoholic. He was, discharged from the Marine Corps, very early on into his career, for his alcohol abuse and violence. He would just kind of ditch me off at my grandma's house, go on benders, come back and pick me up a week later. And it was the reason the fight broke out, my dad was from Massachusetts and my mom was from California. He had wanted to take me back to Massachusetts as soon as I was born, from day one. So as, my mom passed, and there was this tension of him wanting to leave with me, and then her family, not wanting to let go of me either, because I was the only good I had in my life was my mother's side of the family. And so that went on for about 5 years. My dad wasn't charged with anything as far as my mother's death went. It just kind of went on. And my mom's family was very forgiving. And they knew hey, I already lost a mother. They don't want me to lose a father as well. So they gave this guy a second chance, and he fumbled it, all across the board. And then at 5 years old, I made some allegations about my dad that, whether or not they're true, or I still to this day don't really know, but it landed me up in state custody in California. And there I was in state custody for, until I was about 13 years old. I finally, was released back to my father. And then that's kind of that period of my life is extremely difficult, being from an abusive family. It's it's what so it's the normal, you know what I mean? So having my dad just always drunk and partying and having different girls around, and always seeing bar fights and all this crazy shit as a kid, and that was my normal. But then you get thrown into this whole system, and you're just holy shit, it's not normal, and it's more traumatizing than just being in a chaotic household, at least for me.
Why was it worse? Why was it more traumatizing?
I think because you're young, and I notice this more as I have my own children. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old. You realize how much those kids need affection and need love, and I wasn't much older than my son now when I got taken away from my family. And I think just the lack of empathy and the lack of love, you instantly become, a number. The first group home I went into was very big. I would imagine there's several hundred kids at this facility. Yeah, it's a big facility. It's called Orangewood Children's Home. And I just was out of curiosity a couple weeks ago, I went on and Googled it and started reading the Google reviews, and they're fucking horrifying, dude. Kids get out of there and they're adults and they're leaving their Google review of this place, and it's exactly the same shit I dealt with, but years and years and years later.
How the hell does it keep running?
It's state money, it's corruption. Everything, all the group homes in the state of California, at least most of them are ran by the state, which is it's a big money grab. Social Security monies, a lot of kids have deceased parents. They get Social Security money from the state. Medi-Cal, they'll do just about anything to a kid, from dental work that's not necessary to, any kind of prescriptions. And then you have, hundreds of kids all from different backgrounds of abuse, it's like, you got sexual abuse, physical abuse, just neglect, and they're just kind of all thrown in this melting pot. And I think it was kind of segregated around age brackets and sex, like in male and females. But as far as the trauma, you're just kind of in there in the mix. And day one, they put me on like high doses of Ritalin and clonidine, which is like, find out now is a blood thinner. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and my bed sheets would be like soaked in blood, like just completely soaked in blood, because I would like pick my nose or whatever. And my blood was so thin from the clonidine that I would just I'd just bleed and bleed and bleed and bleed and bleed until like I'd wake up or someone would find me in the morning just soaked in blood.
Why would they give you that?
I think clonidine is also used as like maybe a suppressant of some sort. If you got 100 kids with behavioral problems in a home, like it's chaos unless you drug everybody. And that was their day one. Like first thing they did, they got me into group homes and put me on drugs at 5 years old. And I've pretty much stayed on something ever since, whether it be, weed or alcohol or, in my younger years, a lot of cocaine and shit like that. And so like they create little mini drug addicts at a very young age.
Before we move on to when you moved back to your dad's, why was your father never charged? It was just no proof, or no one cared?
No, there was proof. So like it's very fishy, man. Like I don't think when my mom died, her last words, like I just had this conversation with my aunt the other day, and she's like, I don't know if you really know any of this, but she's like, when your mom died, she said, just please forgive Paul. Don't hurt Paul. That's my dad's name. And she pulled the bed sheets up over her head, and she died like just shortly after. Maybe a few days. Those were the last words she spoke. So there was like that nuclear family back then. My grandparents had 9 kids, right? So they had 9 kids, including my mom. So 9 total. And then, so 4 boys, 5 girls, very devout Catholic. And I think their spirituality and the way that they were able to process and grieve losing a daughter, and then just have that empathy and like carry out her last wishes, because they were very much a family of boys that would make this man disappear, like just no questions asked. But there's that honor there, that family honor, to where they kind of like, all right, the kid lost a mom. He doesn't need to lose a dad. What are we going to do? Let's make the best of this. He didn't mean to, like, he didn't beat my mom to death, like he didn't cold blood murder her. They had a fight. He beat her up. He hit her. And she died as a result from that. A lot of men do that. And fix their marriages and go on to never do that sort of thing again. So I think they were in hopes that might have been the case. And it very much wasn't at all. But there was an outbreak or some cases of encephalitis, viral encephalitis, which is like a mosquito-borne, I'm not sure how, I think it affects your brain, an infection in the brain from mosquitoes. So she was on the East Coast. They came back and the fight broke out about wanting to move back there, and she went to the hospital, and they had the fight, and she went to her parents' house and collapsed on the front porch and said, Paul hit me, and then started having a seizure. And they took her to the hospital, and she got diagnosed with viral encephalitis because of the similarities of symptoms, the swelling of the brain, the seizures, the slurred speech, all that stuff, and the fact that she had just got back from the East Coast. They ran with that. So it was either a combination of the mistreatment, the misdiagnosis of her ailments, or the abuse itself that ended up taking her life. Later down in the years, my grandfather had her body exhumed and tested for encephalitis, and it tested negative, so she didn't have it. And then there's all kinds of shit in those death report and all that stuff that show blunt force trauma and all that sort of thing. So I really don't know the answer why he was never charged. He's never been charged with anything, believe it or not. Maybe a DUI, and that's about it. And he's like remained abusive for my whole life.
So he spent 7 years in with the state, and then at 12 years old, you moved back in with your dad?
Yeah, I was like 13 years old, and I would go, maybe 12 or so. I would go from from that group home, that big one, that Orangewood place, they put me into a smaller place, and I lived there for like 4 years in one place. And it was like in the foothills of the mountains and in Southern California. It was kind of like a nice area, but it sucked. I had a normal life on the weekends. I could go home, be with my grandparents on the weekends, see all my cousins. From those 9 kids, there's like 37 grandkids and like 20 something great grandkids. And now like we're growing, and there's going to be great grandkids soon. Like we're a huge family, and we're all really close. So like to come home, and I'd get like Saturdays with my family, and Sunday would be spent like commuting back to the group home. So I never really had like that normal kind of life, It was just always, I don't even know how to describe it, man. It's just...
Well, it's almost like polarizing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you get the total opposite. You go to this family, and you're going to catechism to make your first communion on Saturday, and then like hanging with your family and having pool parties and going to Disneyland and driving back Sunday, and then Monday you're fucking knocking some kid's teeth out in a group home because he's trying to climb in your bed in the middle of the night or whatever. It was just chaos. Like, and then you go from this chaos to calm, and chaos to calm, chaos to calm. Like, it was like this revolving door of my grandparents always trying to like combat like what went on during the week in just a short period of time, and just fill me full of love as much as they could, and then send me right back. And it was just heartbreaking for them, I could imagine, but they never gave up. I had such an amazing family that never gave up on me. And as soon as I got put into state custody, my dad split. He moved back to Massachusetts and kind of went and did his own thing. And the next time I saw him, he had my brother Shane. He had a new family, wife and a kid. And that was kind of like, wow, I didn't know how to take it. I was really excited to have a brother. I always wanted that because I didn't have it, but I never really had it, It was like off in the ether. I'd get some pictures here and there and letters, and I'd see my dad like every couple years at the most. And it's very weird, but I loved my brother so much, like right from the jump. And then, so at 12 years old, time is kind of hard because I wasn't in school. I feel like when you're young, you do everything by like, I was in 5th grade, 6th grade. I didn't go to school till my freshman year of high school. So like timelines are tough.
When you were in the group home, they never made you go to school?
Not public school. They'd have like a class within the group home facility, or like at one, how you have the short bus. Everybody jokes about the short bus. I was on like the really short bus. It was like a minivan with a fucking school bus sign that folded up on the top. Like, and they would take me to like a school that was like full of other group home kids. So like there was like 4 group homes in this general area, and we would all meet there. Yeah, so it wasn't really school at all. It was like gladiator school.
I mean, you accused your dad of something which got you into there. When you moved back in with your dad at 12 or 13, did he have resentment towards you, or?
Not towards me. He always blamed my grandparents. At this age, I didn't know how my mom died. I thought I was fucking terrified of mosquitoes, dude. Like, I thought my mom died from a mosquito bite because that's what that doctor said, and my family rolled with it, and because they didn't want me to hate my dad. So I didn't know any of that. What I had said is that my dad molested me, and I still, to this day, I don't know if it's true or not. I've worked on it, tried to bring it back up, and at this point in life, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. It's like, maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. My gut's telling me it's so I'm torn both ways. You know what I mean? He's a fucking weirdo, so I could kind of like see it, but I've never seen that with my brothers or anything like that. Like abuse for sure, like beatings and whoopings. We've got, but like as far as the sexual abuse, I don't know.
Hell, I got beatings and whoopings.
Yeah, I know.
I deserved
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I remember one night my brother Shane was like, could have been more than 2 years old, and he like was sick and he shit the bed. He diarrheaed in the bed, and my dad just like, I remember him calling him, "You fucking lazy kid," and just like ragdolling this like an infant, dude, and fucking beating the kid and like hucked him across the room because my little brother shit the bed.
my dad didn't do that. It was like we did something stupid and we get a whooping, but
Yeah, and I've got those for sure for mouthing off to my uncles and my elders in my family, catch a smack, like you learn it's different, it's humbling, it's like it's more humiliating than it is painful, but the beatings we got from dad weren't like that.
they were like irrational, just fly off the handle beatings.
They were, yeah, like drunken rage, like he would drink and he would turn into a different person. It's really hard to explain unless you've like seen somebody in that mind's like just I don't know. It's almost like he's possessed. It's crazy. So yeah, at 12 I get released back into custody, back into my dad's custody. And this whole time like I had a like all these family members wanting to adopt me, like but either something would come up or my dad would never release custody, so he still was my father. So he didn't release his rights as a parent. So he still basically had say so whether or not I could be adopted by my grandparents or not. He would never allow it. So I sat there in, state custody for almost 10 years with families like trying to adopt me. And I almost got adopted once by my Uncle Michael, who's like, he's super cool, man. He's like big surfer, all into motocross, was just such a rad dude. He didn't have kids at the time, but he took me to like a Dodgers game or something. And I had pissed in a beer. He was with his wife, and I had pissed in a beer, and I like tried to bring her this cup full of piss. Like I was like 6 or 7 years old, like like a young kid, dude. And I'm like, "Hey Diana, I brought you this beer. It's like half full and warm, and I thought it was funny, and I guess that was like, she was like, no fucking way are we adopting this kid. Like, what are you thinking? So I blew it for myself a few times, it wasn't just the system that was out to get me.
I mean, yeah, maybe she didn't want to adopt you because you're a bit of a pain in the ass, and you're saying you can't blame the system for that, but I mean, being raised in the system they created, probably a kid that's a pain in the ass.
Oh, for sure. And like still a joker, like still think things a lot of times that aren't so funny that I think they are, like I think it was a trauma response, like riding motocross and stuff as a kid. I would see my friends or cousins like just get like totally wrecked, like just like hurt and be concerned for them. But I would just laugh like the fucking Joker, dude. Like I couldn't like traumatizing shit would just like make me laugh. Like it was just so messed up. And my cousins or stuff, they're like, dude, what's wrong with you? This isn't funny. I can't, like, I'm just knocked out. And I know, and I'm sorry, but I know it's not funny, but I just couldn't stop laughing. So I think there's some weird trauma response there, that I've had to work on.
For sure.
So yeah, I got released into his custody. You asked if there was resentment, and not towards me, but definitely towards my grandparents. But there was also no lessons learned. The first night out of the group homes, he got super drunk, and I remember he bought all the fixins for mudslides, vodka, Kahlua milk, a little chocolate syrup, and all that stuff. And he got drunk, and I had a mudslide with him. I had never really drank before. I was like, this is the first time I really had like a cocktail, and we got drunk, and he just beat the shit out of me, man. First night out, he just beat me up super bad, and like had me like pinned on the floor in the kitchen, and was like threatening to take me back to the group homes, and that's how my life started as a teenager. Shortly after that, he he took me and moved me back to Massachusetts, and that was like when everything just went to total shit.
And your grandparents they were in California?
Yeah, they were in California. Yeah, I have a picture of my grandfather and I the day I left, and it's hard to look at because like he's got this look on his face that's like just it's like just defeat, you know? It's like fuck, like I lost the war kind of thing, you know? Like my dad was like this just fucking sorry excuse of a man, you know? And a stolen valor Marine, like he would say he was in war and combat and all this shit, and he was dishonorably discharged. And my grandfather is like a true war hero, you know? He fought in World War II, fought in Korea, and he had a really bad father as well, so he became this man like through the military, and he poured into me his whole life, and I could just see the defeat like in his eyes. And I never realized it when I was young. I was just a kid. You don't see that, you know, but then you look at just a photo and it just, you know, they say a picture can speak 1,000 words, and dude, it says so much. And I think he knew what was coming, you know, like what was ahead of me. And he was right, you know. I became kind of feral, you know, kind of ran wild, did whatever I wanted, and had no support group whatsoever. My dad was super weird. Like we were kids, I was young. Whenever the Jurassic Park movie came out, where they take the dinosaur to like New York, right? Like they're like the dinosaurs in New York, and we're like watching the whole movie, and we're at this big theater called the Cinedome, and I was like so excited to go see this movie there, because like this big giant theater in like the 90s, it was a big deal, you know. So I go there, and the dinosaur gets to New York, and my dad, it's like 40 minutes into the movie, right? And my dad stands up and he's like, oh, this is fucking bullshit. That would never happen, you know? Like, that would never happen. And he's like, come on, PJ, we're out of here. And I'm like, all right. And he drags me into the next theater over, and we watched Howard Stern's Private Parts. I'm fucking 12, 13 years old, you know? Like, was it awesome? Hell yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that movie at 12 years old, 13-year-old teenager, your dad's your hero, dude. You just took me to the sickest movie ever. But now as a father and an adult, like, oh my God. He would take me, I was more of like a friend. He would do some cool shit with me, like took me to see Van Halen a few times and saw Boston, and would go see like super rad concerts. But it was like a rock star environment that a kid, I don't know, maybe should be around. Like, you know, he's rolling joints in the car, smoking weed all the way to the show, partying, chicks flashing their tits out of limousines. And when you're a teenage boy, it seems really cool, you know. But then when you come home and you're hanging out with your friends and your dad wants to smell your fingers to see if they smell like pussy, it becomes weird, you know. So he's like that kind of weird, just a weirdo, just like a full-on weirdo, you know. Anyways, so the East Coast, yeah, it was just super violent, very feral. I finally went to public school for like, I don't know, a few days, and got the boot from there. And
a few days?
Yeah, I didn't last in schools very long at all. I got kicked out of 7 high schools. Like, I just, you got to think, you know, those years when you're young like that, 5 years old to 13, you're so moldable, you know. Those are like some of your most important developmental years of your life. And then from utero to then was just fucking chaos for me. You know, like my violence and my trauma didn't start when I was born. Like it was, I have letter to the day of my mom's death day of my dad apologizing for hitting her. Like to the day, year prior, he was like, I'm sorry. He wrote the letter to my grandparents saying that he was going to get help. And my development going into my teen years was, you know, not great. I was set up for like extreme failure, you know. So yeah, going into Boston and then not having any kind of support group, and then my dad like just would be at the bar all day at the VFW. I just ran wild, man. I had older friends. My friends were like out of high school. Man, you name it, I was into it at a young age. Didn't really do any drugs. I liked to drink, and I smoked a little bit of weed in those years, but like I didn't have any rules, man. I smoked cigarettes at a young age, and then eventually, didn't take long, I ended up in like state custody in Massachusetts.
What age was that?
I want to say like probably around getting close to 14 or so. 13, 14. I think I got released out of state custody when I was 12, going on 13. And then I moved to Massachusetts, and then, yeah, probably right about 13. Like, it didn't take long. My dad had hit me, like really good. I don't know what had happened, but he got drunk, and he had me, like, by my ears, and he was, like, fucking smashing my head off of the wall in the bathroom. And I was able to, like, push him off of me, and it was a small bathroom, so there's like a toilet and a bathtub and a vanity, like, very small, just like a regular, like, guest bath. He had fallen, like, over the railing of the tub. You know, he, like, tripped and fell and went backwards over the rail of the tub and, like, stunned himself. And I just this is the first time I ever fought back, you know, and man, I just unloaded on him until he kind of just went totally limp. And I went outside. My grandmother had called the police, and when the police came to the house, you know, they knew him. Hey, Paul, like, he's up now, and they ended up taking me to jail. So they took me into this place. It was a old mental hospital called Taunton State Hospital, and it's fucking horrifying, dude. The place is, like, absolutely just. You seen that movie, Leonardo DiCaprio, where he's in that fucking loony bin and
something Island,
Shutter Island or some shit. Anyways, it's like that, dude. It looks just like that place. And so I spent the weekend there. It was like a Friday night. I spent the weekend there. I had a court date on Monday. And this place is like maximum security. Like, you're basically in a not a cell, because there's no bars on the door. It's an actual door, you know, but I'd call it a cell. There's a fucking door and a window that's, like, with a cage around it, and you're in there, like, you know, 23 hours a day. You're in that stupid ass room. So Monday I go to court, and they sentenced me to 30 days with a $1 bail. And my dad was the only person that could bail me out. I think now that I'm older, I think they do that to test the parents, to see, like, what kind of parents they have. If someone wants to help their kid and work their shit out, or they'll just take a vacation, you know. And that's what my dad did. I didn't see him. I didn't hear from him for 30 days. I was in that place, and it was tough, man. For the first, like, I don't know, probably the first week or so, I cried myself to sleep every night, you know, like. And you're in there with kids much older. Like, I want to say it was up to 21, but I'm just going to go with 18. The neighborhood I was in was predominantly black community, and I'm just like this fucking skinny little white kid, you know, from California and Massachusetts, and dude, it was tough, man. It was tough. I had to get tough quick, and you know, I'm kind of thankful for, like, my past leading up to that, because I already had pretty thick skin, but, like, I always had somebody I could call on, you know what I mean? I could always pick up the phone and call my grandmother or whatever. I mean, they had got a 1-800 number for me so that I could call them anywhere I was. Like, back then, payphones were a thing. So my grandparents got a 1-800 number so I could just go to a payphone and call them whenever I wanted. Now I'm in this place back there, and it's like, oh shit, man, this is real. I'm like, you know, there's gang members and all kinds of shit that's going on, and I'm in there for 30 days. And so then I got out. Once you're kind of on the radar back there of the police, you know, I live just on the outside of Boston in a little town called Avon. It's like 4 square miles. It's a super small town. My dad went to high school with all the cops. Like, he knew everybody. Everybody knows everybody. And, dude, I was just constantly in and out of juvie, in and out, in and out. And then once I got on the run, I was a flight risk, so I ran and was on the run for a while and turned myself in at a court date. I ended up turning myself in, and then they put me in a 24-hour lockdown facility, and I was going to be there. I was 15 now at this point, and I was going to be there till I was 18. So from like 13 to 15, I was like in and out of juvie and incarcerated, and I made it into one group home, and I kicked a staff member in the nuts, like super, super hard, and then I couldn't go to group homes anymore because I was, like, kind of violent. And but he was a dick. His name was Ryan. He was like a fucking he was like a young Marine. He worked on the group homes on the weekends or whatever. And he just had a chip on his shoulder. We were playing football one day. He was a center, quarterback, and he was quarterbacking. So he was like down, like ready for the hike, you know? And so he's like down and fucking dude, I got him from behind and just like kicked him square in the nuts like as hard as I could. I was like 14 and just leveled him. But he jumped up and just beat the shit out of me, man. He chased me all the way into the house and just fucking beat my ass. And I couldn't go into group homes anymore after that. So they put me in this. That's when I ran. I ran from there. And then they put me in that lockdown facility. And I was going to stay there until I was 18. That was the wrap. And then after there, I was there for 8 months. I didn't go outside for 8 months. I looked like I was from the fucking Twilight, dude. Like I was so pale and white, but I was like, now I was like, had hit puberty, so I had been working out a bunch and I was like really big, but I was just like this pale. I have a picture of me like when I got back to California, and I'm just like, I just look so pale and unhealthy. It's strange to think to take a kid, a teenager, and tell them they can't go outside for 8 months, you know, and it would have been 3 years had somebody not adopted me. So my Uncle Don, my mom's brother, that was really close friends with my dad, he agreed. He was the only person that my father would release custody to. So he agreed to adopt me, but he had just gone through a divorce, and he was kind of like... He's like always been kind of a recovering alcoholic, and not like an abusive alcohol like dude, like where he would be like drunk and mean. He's just drunk and fucking crazy, dude. Like he got caught trying to steal frozen cadavers from UCI Medical Center when he was like in his 20s because he wanted to push them out the back of his car on the freeway and see like if they would shatter. So he like seen it in a movie where they like a body shattered or whatever. So he was like at the UCI and he's like poking the frozen fucking cadavers, and he got caught by security, but that was his plan. So he's just wild, you know what I mean? Just kind of a wild child. Definitely the craziest of the Nootbaar boys. And but that was who my dad said that he would let take custody, and so he agreed to it. So after it's good, huh?
That's hilarious. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but of all the people to adopt my kid, I want the body stealing uncle.
Yeah, exactly. So the caveat to that was that he lived in a motorhome in my grandparents' driveway at the time because he had just moved from Oregon back to California and was going through this divorce. And he's like, it was probably not the best time for him to adopt a kid, but he agreed to it, and I'm super grateful for it, you know, because it changed my life forever. But they took me from that jail. It was in Fall River. They took me from there to Logan Airport in handcuffs and shackles, like around the waist, around the ankles, like fucking doing the penguin walk. And that they took me to get a haircut, so I was able to go to a barber shop and sit there and get a haircut. And they walked me all the way through the airport like that. And it was before, it was pre 9/11, so you could walk your family to the terminal and like peace out with them. And I was on probation, and my probation officer, I think his name is Mike Fitzgerald. I always try to remember because I've tried to look him up, but I think his name was Mike Fitzgerald. He like gave me like a really sincere apology, and he's like, "Hey, I'm really sorry." He's like, "Keeping you in that facility was the only way that we could keep you away from your father." He's like, "Your dad's so abusive, and it was the only thing that we could come up with to keep you there." And he's like, he was just really sorry. Now, you know, that shows how broken the system is, you know. I mean, I landed in some foster homes and stuff back there for very short periods of time. But like I said, I was violent and fucking crazy and didn't like want to comply with authority. So there's accountability there as well to be taken of why I was where I was at. But they took me to California, or I got to the terminal, I flew to California, and then that was the summer before my freshman year of high school.
And everything's been good since.
Fuck no.
Fuck no.
No, man. Oh, you kidding me? High school was like it was a blast, but that's all it was for me, was something that was like, I don't know how to describe it, man. I had so much fun in high school, dude, but at the expense of my teachers and my principals and my fellow classmates. I lasted 1 year at high school. That's the longest. My freshman year, I did the whole year at Rancho Alamitos, which is where my mom actually went to school. So I had like some of the same teachers as her, and as my uncles and aunts, and they kind of like, the family kind of had a reputation of being like wild party animals back in those days. So I kind of carried on the legacy. I just was a class clown, man. I just was always doing something funny, and just trying to get a laugh out of people. And I didn't realize until after high school that I didn't have a girlfriend ever in high school, but like after you graduated, it was like, oh, all these girls had crushes on you and thought you were cute and this and that, but I just like had no clue. I could care less about any of that because I had never hung out with girls in my life besides my cousins, in group homes and stuff. It's all dudes all the time. So I had no idea how to like interact with chicks. So I just always had like my homies that I'd hang out with. They were like real into skateboarding and doing that sort of thing, but I was fighting a lot. I got in a lot of fights. I lived in an area that was like high in gang violence. It was like right on the border of four school districts, and I lived on like the poor corner. And even in the same neighborhood, I didn't live in like a poor neighborhood, but just my address, I went to like a kind of a shitty school. There was a lot of Asian and Latino gangs there. So I had already come from an environment where I would never let anybody throw a first punch after so long. You know what I mean? So I was like, if you could tell, like, you'd see kids in high school or whatever where they would like do this shoving match, like before a fight, like it never got there with me. Like I was just always quick to throw blows, and was pretty good at it. But it caught up with me, man. I got kicked out of that school for fighting and ended up in continuation school. Got kicked out of that continuation school for fighting. And then eventually my grandparents had kind of like stepped in to start raising me because my uncle had met a girlfriend, and it just, to prioritize being a father, figure wasn't his strong point. He gave it a really good shot and he tried the best he could with the tools he had, but he just wasn't equipped to do what I was doing. Like he would take me to therapy and take me to my BMX races and sit up all night with me doing my homework, and I'd never turn it in. But what I needed was like, I don't know what I needed, you know what I mean? But it wasn't him. So my grandparents kind of stepped in and I became too much for them. And I have an aunt and uncle who live up here in Northern California where I live now, who like my junior year of high school, so I had done my freshman sophomore year in LA, and then moved up to Northern California my junior and senior year, and they brought me in, and they have a son. His name's Nick. He's my brother. Nick and Ned. They got 2 kids, and they're my brothers, man. They're like, we've been super close since we were young. We're not too far apart in age, and so they adopted me in high school, and that was like a whole nother chapter because I had like moved to, it was, my whole life has kind of been this way, like shit don't work out, all right, you're gone, pack your shit, and you get 5 minutes in a trash bag to pack your stuff and move to the next place. So like moving around wasn't a big thing to me, but what I really needed was somebody to like not give up and stick it out, you know what I mean? Like I needed somebody to say, hey, no matter how hard this fucking gets, you're not going anywhere. You know what I mean? And I never had that until I gave it to myself, So even after a certain time living with my aunt and uncle and up here, they were like, dude, we can't hang. Like, you're an animal. So I started drinking that time. It's a very small town. It's called Middletown, California, and it's like, shit, dude, I don't know. There's a sign at our school that said you can't ride your horse, like no horse parking here or whatever. So it's like super podunk. Yeah, I was looking through a yearbook the other day, and like the shit you see on Instagram with like the fucking hillbilly with the shotgun and her senior prom photo, like that was full on in there, like prom photo, this girl with her pink shotgun, and it was that kind of school, so it was super rural. There was no cops. My graduating class was like probably 100 kids at the most, and
One thing I've learned through my experience with mental health and addictions is you never know what you need to hear until you hear it. Make sure to rate and review on Apple and to tell as many people as you can about the podcast so others can hear something they need to hear from one of my guests. After all, this is a free mental health service, which is a rare thing, so why not share with as many people as you can?
I started drinking like hard alcohol young. I liked whiskey a lot. Like Old Crow was kind of like my jam, or Kessler, because those two, I don't know, they were just cheap and I could get it. Yeah, I don't know why I liked Old Crow and Kessler, but I did, and I would drink. I drank a fucking lot, man, like till I'd just black out drunk. It was a heavy weed growing community, so we would always have like big amounts of weed. So people would come up from the Bay Area, like San Francisco and Oakland and stuff, to buy weed from our older friends. And from that came good quality cocaine, and so we were kids, 16, 17 years old, buying and selling and doing shitloads of coke and drinking and running amok, dude. Just really running amok. And still I wasn't in. All my friends are like got girlfriends and they're having sex with all these chicks and partying and doing that, and I still could care less about chicks, dude. Like I just want to hang with my homies and party and get fucked up and ride dirt bikes. That was like all I did through high school. And then eventually my aunt and uncle, they were like, they got burned out of the mess too. My aunt and uncle finally, they got sick of me, so I ended up moving out. I was like 17-ish. I didn't finish high school. I moved back to LA, lived with my grandparents for a little bit, and then I had older friends, always growing up, and my friends were like, some of them were graduated high school, going into college. We're like, hey, let's rent a house. Like, let's all rent a house. Some dumbass gave us the keys to like a fucking a house, 4-bedroom house, and thank God my name wasn't on the lease, but like, yeah, so I was like 17, I moved out with a bunch of college friends, and dude, we ran wild, man. We had so much fun. We had like every wall was like tagged in graffiti, like black lights strips through the whole house, like I don't think we ever vacuumed the floors one time. There was like we had a fireplace, and that was our ashtray. We just like flick our cigarette butts in the fireplace. So there's like this fucking mountain of cigarette butts in the fireplace. And oh God, dude, we had a blast. We'd have the most ragingest house parties with like hundreds of people at these parties, man. And dude, it's so cool, man. 21 years ago today, my life changed. I met my wife at a Halloween party in that house. She came dressed as a cop with her 2 girlfriends and
sexy cop?
A sexy cop, man. Such a sexy cop. Yeah, man. Lots of cleavage. But yeah, so I met her at a house party there. My roommate Ryan, he was really into her. Like he was like writing her poetry and shit. And he's like, I'm gonna invite this girl Kim, and he was like all into her. So she shows up at this party, and I don't know, man. She was just so captivating, dude. Like, she was cool. She was hard to get. She was really hard to get. I was a wild ass, dude. Like, I was wild. She was very put together, like, she drove a 65 Mustang and like super, just so cute, dude. Just like so cool, man. And had the cool car and older brothers and shit, and like just such a rad chick. And we started hanging out a lot, and I totally like stole her from my friend, but I'm so glad that I did. And I even had this kid, our friend Kyle Ellison was like, oh man, Kim is so hot. He's like, I'm gonna ask her out. And I was like, oh dude, you can't do that. That's Ryan's Brian's really into her, bro. Like, you back down. and then I swooped in, you know. So
All's fair in love and war.
yeah, all's fair when you're 17 years old, dude. Fuck off. She's mine. So yeah, we started dating, and then it's kind of cool because my best friend who lived in that house with me, his name's Jim. He met his wife that night, who is Kim's best friend. They came dressed together as cops, and then my cousin Garrett met a girl there, and he got married too. So these 3 girls showed up, and we all ended up marrying one of them. And Garrett is not with her anymore, but Jim and Dana are still together, and they got 2 kids now, and Kim and I are still together 21 years later.
Damn. Well, it was a good party. 3 marriages came out of it.
Dude,
4 kids.
Dude, the best parties.
More, maybe.
The absolute best parties. It was a lot of fun. So, but man, like, I still was like heavy into my drinking. You know what I mean? And never in like a destructive way. Like, I would get into a lot of fights, but I wasn't like a mean drunk. I was like a wild, crazy guy. And if somebody was like, hey, fuck you, it was like, then it's on. You know what I mean? But I was just very much into partying. I mean, I still miss it. It was so much fun, dude. It was a blast. There's no way I'm going to say I didn't have a great time, like, drinking and boozing and doing drugs and, like, just running wild. But eventually you get tired of apologizing. How many times are you going to apologize for shit you don't remember? Or have your wife crying because you said some stupid fucked up shit that you thought was funny in front of people that you care about, and you like humiliate your wife because you're making some stupid ass joke. You know what I mean? Like, I did a lot of that, you know, and I mean, I woke up in a jail cell and had no idea how I got there. And I was like, did I kill somebody in a car accident? Why am I here? I was like pepper sprayed and my body hurt and I had no clue why I was there. You know, that's a scary thing. That's enough to quit drinking. And I mean, I was in jail for a drunk in public and got out of jail and was hitchhiking on the freeway, and the cop pulled me over and wanted to take me back to jail for being drunk in public. I'm like, I just got out of jail, man. Like you can't take me back. Here's my token. They give you like a bus token, you know? And then in like around 27 or so, I started to slow down. We bought a house, you know, we moved in together. We bought a house. I think my grandfather had passed away. That was kind of a difficult moment for me because he was like such my rock, you know what I mean? Like, if I ever had a father, it was him. And when he passed away, it was like, all right, you know, like nobody's coming now. Like, there was a point I called my grandfather in jail for drunk in public, you know, and they were going to let me out. I partied with a friend. It's kind of a funny story, so I'll share it. We went to this place, TGI Fridays. It was my 21st birthday. We went to this TGI Fridays, and they cut us off. Me and my friend Shane, they cut us off, and we couldn't figure out why. And we're like, why? And they're like, well, you've had 14 Long Islands and fucking like 4 Jaeger bombs in the matter of an hour and a half. Like, you guys are done. Like, we're cutting you off. So we're leaving Fridays. And a server's like, hey, come sit outside. I'll keep serving you outside in my section. Like, come on out. So we went and partied outside at the patio. And when we're leaving, we're at this mall. It's called the Block of Orange. It's like this big outdoor plaza, this big mall. And we walk outside, and as soon as we walk out the door, there's this like my friend's like 6'5". He's just a big dude. He's a captain of a ship now. He's like just a big, like, if you ever see a pirate, like, that's him, dude. And Shane points in this security guard's face for no reason, and it's just like, I will fuck you up. And then just fucking ran off like a little bitch into the fucking, like, out into the parking lot. And I'm like, what the hell? So now, like, I'm like, dude, what's going on? I'm standing over by his car. Now there's like all these security guards around. They're like all looking for him. And I'm like standing by his car. I'm like, dude, where is this guy? And I hear in the bushes, he's like, hey, dude. He's like, start the car. And he like threw me his keys. And we're like, dude, I'm fucking wasted, dude. I'm like so hammered drunk. But I'm like, all right. You know, when you're in 21, you could just keep going, you know? Like, you don't stop. He throws me his keys. I start the car. We rip he jumps in, we rip across the parking lot, and I park the car over there, and we call a cab. I'm like, I can't drive, dude. We call a cab. So we go call a cab. The cab picks us up. They take us to like this world buffet, like where they have like all this food from all over the world, like frog legs, caviar, catfish, like all this shit. And we're just like trying it all, you know what I mean? Just trying everything. And then it gets dark and we want to go to this bar down the road. It's called Sugar's, and it's like a bikini bar, like a very grimy bar. I've driven by it since I was born, and it's like right here in downtown Garden Grove. And so we go over to Sugar's, and the front door's closed, right? The front door's closed. There's a cop car in the parking lot, and the front door's locked, and the cop car's running. So we go around the back door, and it's locked too. And I'd been in there, and there's always this big fat cop that would go in there, and like we'd have to put our cigarettes out, and he would just like get touchy-feely with the girls. Just the token like piece of shit fucking cop that you see in the TV movies or whatever that are just grimy, crooked, you know? He was just in there doing his thing or whatever. So I knew who it was. I go back to the front door, and I'm fucking pounding on the door. Let me in! And that guy kicked the door open and hit me just square in the face. Boom! And he's like, the bar's closed. I'm like, it's like 9 o'clock, dude. What are you talking about? So I wanted to throw, he closes the door and they lock it. And I'm like, I wanted to throw his car in reverse because it was running. And I told Shane, hey, I'm going to throw his car in reverse and let's watch it go out in the traffic, you know, like, and we'll just watch it crash in the road. And he's like, no, man. He's like, no, you can't do that. That's a terrible idea. I'm like, all right, we won't do that. So we go over next door is the 7-Eleven. We go to 7-Eleven, we buy a 6-pack of Newcastle and a dozen eggs. And I'm like, let's just egg this cop.
For omelets.
Yeah, for omelets. I'm like, let's just egg his car. Like, we'll just throw some eggs. So, man, Shane he stood there with this thing of eggs and just hysterically laughing, just like from like 5 feet away, just lobbed all these eggs all over this cop car. And we're like, let's go across the street and hide. There's like this staircase. Like, let's hide under the staircase. I want to see the look on his face when he comes out and sees his fucking car all egged, you know? And we're under there, dude, like, it had been like 30 minutes or more. We're drinking our beers, waiting, and he finally comes out. And we're like hiding underneath this staircase. Like, there's no way he knows where we're at. You know what I mean? We're across 4 lanes of traffic. Like, and he comes out and he looks at his car and he fucking shines his light, and he shined his light right on us, dude. Like, right here and right on us. And we're like, oh, fuck. And we start running. And he yells, if I catch you, I'm going to fuck you up. And, dude, there's cops. They came from every direction, dude. Like, somebody had snitched on us. They seen us doing it. They snitched. They said, they're over there hiding. He called in for backup, waited, came out. And, like, dude, they're from every direction, right? And we're, like, hopping fences. I'm hopping fences. Shane's hopping fences. I'm hiding in a treehouse in someone's backyard. And I hear them sick the dogs on my buddy. They're like, dude, they get him. They kick the shit. I hear everything. And I'm like, oh, man. And then everything calms down. I'm like in the clear. So I climb down. It's been a couple hours. I like climb down out of this treehouse and walk through these people's backyard, hop a fence. And I'm like in a cul-de-sac, you know, where there's no out. It's like a dead end. As soon as I walked out of this backyard, a fucking cop turned the corner. It was just like the luck of the draw. And right here's a block wall. I was almost home, dude. Like, I was right there. And they turn their corner and they shine the light on me. And the cop comes up. He's like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I live right here. And I just heard all this commotion. And just denied. Didn't admit anything, you know. I just denied. So anyways, they took me into jail. And I'm denying everything. And they got me there. And I'm telling the cop on the way there, I'm like, I didn't do anything, man. I really didn't. I didn't throw any eggs. I was like just there. I was definitely the instigator of all of it. But as far as like legalities go, I mean, last thing I knew, there was no law against being a bad influence, you know. So I deny, and the cop stops his car and he starts clicking his pen in my face, like between the thing, and he's like, everything's right here, dude. He's just clicking his pen. He's like, whatever I fucking write down is what you did. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just kept my mouth shut. I'm standing in the jail. they bring my buddy Shane in, and I don't even look at him. I'm staring at the wall. I'm like facing the wall, and he goes, "Don't worry, Paul. I told him everything." And I'm like telling them, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know nothing. I didn't do anything. I don't know nothing. I'm just denying. He's like, "Don't worry, Paul. I told him everything." And I'm like, "Fuck, man."
Do I know you, sir? To your buddy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know you, man. So they throw me in this jail cell. Long story short, I guess they were going to let me out in the morning, but I was so pissed. I hate cops. I don't now. I did then. I fucking hated them. So they bring me Jack in the Box in the morning. And I take the Jack in the Box, the bag, and I threw it in the toilet, and I flushed the toilet. Just thinking, I'm going to flush all this shit down the toilet. Fuck you guys. I don't want it. And the toilet plugged and overflowed and flooded the jail cell. And they came and they're like, you, sir, we're about to go home. Now you're going to jail. And they took me into jail and they put me in, it's called OC Maine. And this is the last time I ever went to jail, so it's kind of important. So OC Maine is in Santa Ana, which is like a super tough Latino neighborhood in like the heart of Orange County. It's just like very ghetto. It's kind of coming around now, but back in those days it was really tough. A lot of gang violence. They put me in an 80-man cell with no guard, and everybody in there is like waiting trial for like, dude, I mean, you got DUIs, and you got murderers, and you got rapists, and you got child molesters, and you've got people who didn't pay their child support, and then some drunk ass kid, like all in one big ass cell with no guard.
Why are you in here? I flooded a toilet.
Yeah, I flooded a toilet. Anyways, I called my grandfather to bail me out. I was like, "Hey, I'm in jail." I'd never been arrested before, like as an adult. He told me tough shit. He's like, "Fucking, you're a big boy, you want to go out and drink and do this shit, like deal with it." And I'm sure it was probably one of the harder things that he ever had to do. Leave his grandson in jail, But it was everything I needed, man. It was absolutely terrifying. Like one of the first few days that I was there, they drug some dude into the shower, like an older guy, for not taking his meds, and they just beat the fucking shit out of him, man. Like, he's probably 70 years old, and like 4 young little white dudes just tag teamed this guy and just beat the fuck out of him. And then that was like how my next 2 weeks were of sitting in there. And then I was released from jail at 5 a.m. And then I had to go. My wife picked me up. We weren't married yet, but she picked me up at the jailhouse or the 7-Eleven down the street where I could get a phone call. And she drove me 3 hours north to Santa Barbara because I had another court date for being drunk in public. That one where I woke up in jail and had no idea why I was there. I had filed charges against the police department because my friends told me that cop grabbed me for no reason and beat me up and pepper sprayed me for nothing. So I went with that, and they took it serious because there had been other allegations on that officer. Boy, was I wrong. So I get there for my court date, get out of jail 5 a.m., drive 3 hours, 8 a.m. court date in Santa Barbara, just fresh out of jail. And I think the guy before me really helped out because he was on trial and he was totally crazy. He's like yelling about him being the president and how Dick Cheney's trying to kill him and all this crazy shit. And then there's me next, and they say, "All right, here's your charges. You filing a motion against these guys saying that he was abusive, or do you still plead not guilty?" And I said, "Yes, sir, not guilty." And they hit play on a fucking tape recorder, audio from the police car. And you just hear him, "Sir, if you get out of those handcuffs one more time, I'm gonna have to pepper spray you." And there's just me in the back, "Fuck your mother, I'll fucking kill you," and just crazy, dude. Just totally out of line, fucking nuts, dude. And anyways, I was put on probation because I didn't get off that charge. And so, dude, I was on probation in 2 counties for, Orange County and I think Ventura County for being drunk and being stupid. And it didn't even stop there. Like, I quit drinking for 9 months after that. After I got out of jail, I didn't drink.
Because you were pregnant.
Yeah, because I was pregnant, exactly. So I quit drinking for 9 months, and then I had my son, and then started just hitting it hard. No, I was good, and then after work one day, I've always had a good job. I've been a plumber for like the last 25-ish years. So after work one day, my boss was like, hey, you want to have a drink? I looked up to this dude. He was a really cool guy. He had done a stretch in Ironwood Penitentiary for his girlfriend was raped, and he took the dude's head to a fucking inside of a door and just like watermelon the guy's head. And the dude didn't die, but he went like he had like severe brain damage and was like in a wheelchair and was handicapped from it. But he had to do a long time in Ironwood Penitentiary. And I kind of looked up to him for like, he was so kind, you know what I mean? He was such a kind dude, but like, don't fuck with this guy because he's got this darkness in him, a lot like myself. And he asked me if I want to have a drink, and I said sure. And then that was like the longest period of sobriety of my life, it was that 9 months. I continued on boozing for a while, having fun, and then when I turned 27, my grandfather had passed away, and I kind of like was forced to grow up because I knew like nobody's coming. Nobody else is coming.
There's no safety net anymore.
Yeah, there was no safety net. And so I moved out. In the meantime, I was in a lawsuit, and I got in like an argument with my boss at work. And he was like this ex-Hell's Angel, he's just a piece of shit. I'll just say it. Charlie, you're a fucking shitbag if you're listening to this. But he pushed me out a window and cut my arm, and I don't even know if you could see, but I have like this gnarly, like my arm is just kind of like deformed from it. But anyways, I almost bled to death. I spent a week in the hospital. It like really kind of handicapped me for I can still work, but I still have issues with this arm. There's certain things I can't do. And I had got a settlement from that lawsuit, which wasn't much. I was making really good money. I was making like $200,000 a year, and I was off work for like 2 years. And then when I walked away, I had like, they wrote me a check for like $24,000. It was so lame, dude. But I bought furniture, and my wife and I moved into an apartment. It's the first time we lived together. We had broke up for a while. I kind of left that out, but we broke up for a little while, and I had moved on and like dated a girl, and then we ran into each other at a wedding. We were both in a wedding. She was a bridesmaid and I was a groomsman. I'm like, oh, she still loves me, like there's something still there. Like it'd be easy to just like, like mingle with somebody if you didn't have feelings, but she still had these feelings. So that was like, I could tell the way she was acting. So I called her after that wedding, and I was like, hey, would you like to give it another go? I really miss you. And so it was a really good decision, and we've stayed together ever since. And so we moved in that apartment, and then eventually moved into a house, and then eventually bought a house. And in the meantime, I stopped partying so much, and I was working at like a continuation high school as like a counselor for troubled kids, and then started a youth outreach for kids that were from like inner cities and gang violence and some human trafficking survivors, and like really dove into that.
Did you have the schooling for it?
No, I just kind of, I had the credentials from living a lifetime of chaos, but I don't have any like formal training, I've just always been really good with working with youth, probably because there's so much relatability, and I feel so young at heart, But then things happen, and I had a kid who I was super close with. His name was Anthony. He got murdered while I was on a surf trip in Costa Rica. I got out of the water and checked my phone, and I got a text message that Anthony was murdered. They found his body in Oceanside in someone's front lawn, and that was really hard. And then I got back, and another kid that I worked with caught a life sentence for shooting an off-duty sheriff. And then right shortly after, another girl overdosed, and then another suicide. It was like 4 of these deaths with these kids that I was like close with that like all happened like back to back, and I'm like, oh man, I felt like I was failing them. Like whatever I was doing wasn't impactful, and on top of not being impactful was also really painful. That failure, the expense of life is like, it's priceless. And I felt like these things that were so precious to people, like that I didn't have this, I wasn't meant to do it in the capacity. Like you said, did you have training? Did you go to school? Like I had all these reasons, no. So I stopped working with kids, just kind of did my own thing, got my contractor's license, started a plumbing business. So anyways, we sold that house and we moved to Northern California, and I haven't done anything illegal really since, you know. It's been a game changer, and then kind of settled down here and started having kids.
The end. No.
Yeah,
But
that's it.
I mean, you've obviously had to deal with some of your traumas, and like you didn't just stop and everything's better.
No, not at all. I had like my childhood never really seemed to affect me in a way other than like being reckless and wild, you know, like I would often be like, oh man, it'd be nice to have a mom, or I've like always fucking can't stand my dad, you know, he's like a cockroach, dude. He just doesn't die. He's just still alcoholic and you know, homeless and in and out of homeless shelters and losing jobs and just all kinds of problems for my brothers. And so I didn't really have like this poor relationship with my past, with my childhood traumas until I had kids, dude. When my son was born, it was scary because I didn't know. When I found out my wife was pregnant, I reached out to my dad because I was scared. I was like, hey, what were your parents like? You know, like, did you have bad parents? Were you abused? Or is this hereditary? Am I going to somehow turn into the psychopath that you are? And he told me he had great parents. He's like, I had really good parents. My mom was great. My dad worked a lot. He wasn't around. And then that really fucked me up because I was like, shit, man. Like, so this behavior wasn't learned. It's just in you, you know, it's there. And that kind of messed me up, man. And it scared me. And then, so I had my son. Everything's pretty good, right? You're learning a lot. You're teaching yourself how to be a father. I didn't have one at that age. So I was like, very much learning by failing, you know, just falling flat on my face over and over again, getting back up and just learning. But then when my son was like 5 months old or so, he picked up a book of matches. He was like playing in my room and there was some matches on the floor and he picked them up. And I bent down to pick up these matches. Dude, it was like a movie clip cut, you know, action. And I'm in a room and I'm fucking 3 years old and my dad's holding me down and he's burning me with matches. And I'm like, it's as a memory. And I'm like, whoa, like, where did this... And I'm like frozen in time. Like, I don't even know what the fuck had happened. Like, I was like blown away. You know what I mean? And it started happening over and over again with different memories, group home memories, foster home memories, mental hospitals. Dude, the lights in the kitchen, the noise on the light in the kitchen started bugging the shit out of me. The buzzing of it makes me crazy. And then one day I have a memory of like being strapped to a hospital bed, like restrained in a bed, and I could hear like the buzzing of the fluorescent light, you know, and it's just things like that started clicking, like all this stuff, like boom, one after another, my subconscious just started letting me have it. And it really started messing me up to where it was crazy, man. I couldn't shake it no matter what I would try to do. Like I wouldn't drink. I got drunk once when my son was like very young and I was hungover the next day and I just was like miserable from it. And I'm like, I wrote it off. I'm like, I'm not going to do that again. So at that time, like I stopped partying. I stopped drinking, not completely, but stopped like getting drunk. And that didn't seem to help. Then I started having nightmares. Nightmares are insane. So I'm going crazy, man. I really thought I was losing my mind. So I was going to fucking kill myself, man. I was like standing in my backyard and I couldn't believe that like everything I had ever wanted, like I have my house, I have a wife, I have a beautiful son, I own a business, like everything on the outside is like success, success, success. Everything screams success. I have like the nice car, all of that shit that you would think would say, man, this guy's got it together. So I had like everything going for me, and inside I'm like this shell of a man. Like I'm fucking empty and I'm miserable and I just fucking I feel like the only way out of this shit is like to take my life. And after everything I'd been through in my life, like everything we just spoke about, like that just scratches the surface, dude. Those are like bullet points. You know, I could write a book as big as the Bible on like all the trauma and shit that I had to endure. And none of that ever led me to want to take my life. And it was like this dream life that I had created was the thing that was going to do it, you know? Like, so I'm like, fuck that. There's got to be another way. So I reached out to a therapist, the same guy I saw when I was in high school. and total kook, you know. He's like just a total not good. Like, I don't know where these people get their, some things you just can't learn in books, man, you know. And so I stopped working with him, and somehow got referred to this woman. I had heard about doing like psychedelic assisted therapy. I've always like farted around with mushrooms and stuff growing up, but had never really done any other psychedelic other than mushrooms. So I didn't really know much about what to expect or any of that. So I started doing some homework on that, and I started reading about MDMA and trauma work, you know, and like all this repressed trauma, and specifically complex trauma where there's a lifetime of it, and how people are able to process and go through and deal with all their repressed traumas in like one or two settings. And so I really started to like dive into that. And then one day I was on a job site and just had brought it up to a client, like, here's what I'm dealing with, and here's what I want to do, and I don't know what to fucking do. And I'm like standing up on this hillside with this guy in the mountains looking at a well, and he's like, well, you should talk to my wife. She does this MDMA assisted therapy. That's what she does for a living. That she introduced me to a woman who is just an angel, man. She was very thorough, and not like, yeah, show up, we'll take some fucking ecstasy and shoot the shit. Like, no, she put me through like 6 months of total fucking hell of like therapy work before I did this, to see like what it was that was going to be important, where to navigate, how far she could take me without any medicine into these uncomfortable places of like my memories through like EMDR and tapping and just regular talk therapy. And then she introduced me to a dude who, there was just some things that I wasn't comfortable talking to with a woman, you know, about my violent past and some of the things that I had done. I had like this fear of like scaring her, you know. I didn't want to scare her. She's like a beautiful, petite, you know, woman. And I just felt like the things that I wanted to pour out, I didn't want to pour out onto her, because to me it was scary. She's like, well, I kind of have somebody in mind, you know, and I'm like, well, can you tell me about him? She's like, well, he's a bit of a pirate, you know. I'm like, all right, fucking say less, dude. Let's go. That's the one. And so I started seeing both of these two and really tag team in therapy, man. Just like boom, boom, like twice a week, 3 times a week I was in therapy, spent all my fucking money. I had like $50,000 in cash saved up, and I spent just about all of it on therapy and coaching and whatever I could do to just like undo my brain. Whatever I could do to better myself. And slowly I started seeing improvements. And the nightmares and the flashbacks were still there. And then one day she said, okay, I think it's time. You know, I think you're ready. And it had been about 6 months of this ongoing therapy. And in the meantime, shit, my wife got pregnant again. Where now we have another baby on the way. And I'm like desperate, you know, and I'm like, all right, let's go. And so I did my first session with MDMA with both therapists. They were friends, so I asked them both to facilitate for me, and they agreed to it. Man, I unpacked a lifetime of shit in like 4 hours, dude. And my life has been forever changed in like the most amazing ways ever since that day. Like, I haven't had a single flashback, you know. Smells still get me, you know, from here and there. I don't know how familiar you are with, you know, with trauma and how it works on the brain and your memories and things, but smells can be like a really severe trigger for a lot of people. And smells would really get me, like mostly cleaning products, because a lot of like the trauma and like the dirty, grimy shit that happens in group homes and in jail happens in the bathrooms, you know. And so cleaning products will always get me. And go figure, I'm a fucking plumber, you know. So for 20 years of a plumbing career, I'm like constantly battling PTSD triggers in people's bathrooms and stuff without even knowing it, you know. Like just being pissed in a bathroom for no reason And then you start learning and you're like, oh, that's why, like this triggers a trauma response in you. And then all that stopped, and I continued going to therapy for quite a while after that. And then shortly before my daughter was born, my therapist was like, she's like, I think we're done here. She's like, I don't think you really need to see me anymore. Really? She's like, yeah. Like, she's like, do you feel that way? And I'm like, yeah, kind of, and so I stopped seeing her. And then like a few weeks later, my other therapist is like, hey man, he's like, I think like, he's like, I'll keep seeing you if you want. He's like, but I think we're good here. And in the meantime of all this, I like, while I'm learning and working on my own self, like I'm reading every book that I can on trauma, and I'm taking every seminar on trauma, and I'm signing up for classes on how to facilitate and hold space for people and do all this stuff, thinking that like maybe it'll help me somewhere down the road, not knowing that it was going to become like my passion and now like a career for me of helping people. So like through healing myself, I learned so much. And like after that went on to like take more schooling and stuff on how to do this type of work with other people.
That's fucking amazing that you've gone from, well, I won't say some of the stuff you've done, but gone from where you were and what you've done to where you are now.
Yeah, for sure. It really is. There's no coincidence that I've been sexually abused, physically abused, mentally abused, neglected, psychologically abused, forced to take drugs, like all this stuff. Like it doesn't just happen to one person for him to like then become somebody and not pour back out into the world. Like I'm able to help like such a huge variety of people because of all the shit that I've been through, that it makes me like not have any regret. For one, like I wouldn't take back a single thing in my life. Even the terrible things that I've done are some sort of a learning curve for me and to shape me into who I am now. No matter how gruesome or terrible they were, I wouldn't take it back. Nor would I take back anything that had been done to me, from my mother dying to being in the group homes to being abused by my dad to like, it's the hurt goes on and it still goes on and on. My brother just died a fucking year ago from a fentanyl overdose. And there was so much hate in there for me, like through this, and having to deal with my dad again. Like it doesn't stop. Like I'm still being traumatized by this person, and I'm continuing to grow. And when you're doing the work and you can see like, I got to offer forgiveness to a guy who was a director of a group home, right? And he had all this trauma in regards to like, when you do the work, like the work that I do, you'll get some intentions down. And there'll be like 4 or 5 intentions on what you want to address during the session, right? And they're very specific. And right in the middle of his intentions was restraining children in a group home setting. And I'm like, this guy's paying me good money to work with him through this stuff. And I avoided that intention like the fucking plague because it was painful to me, because he was very much my perpetrator for a lot of years. And I had like this anger and this resentment towards that person, towards him specifically. And I went through every other intention, boom, 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 skipped that one, went to the next one, went to the next one. And then finally it was there. And I'm like, Paul, this isn't about you. This is about him and healing him. And so I brought it up and I said, okay, dude, like, what's with this here? Like, there's something there. And he went on to tell me about how fucking terrible it was and how he hated every second of it, and that it affected him his whole life to have to do that to children. And I was able to be that child. I'm like crying here. And I was able to be that child and offer forgiveness to this man and say, hey, dude, from this young man that you were restraining, I forgive you, and I'm sorry that you had to do that, and I absolutely forgive you, and I fucking meant it, and it was so healing for him and for me, because like for my whole life, how could people do that to kids? Like, how could literally 5 grown men pin me to a ground at as a teenager at like 12, 13 years old? Like, how could you do that to a kid? And then you realize it was no more fun for them than it was for you. It's just terrible all the way around. And the system is what's fucking broken. And that kid needed a hug, not to be thrown to the floor and pinned down. So when you go through this and you're able to offer that forgiveness and stuff because of the things that you went through, it allows it to carry weight, but not like a weight where it's like I carry this burden around forever. It's like now I carry this weight where I'm like, fuck yeah, I got another battle sword ready, you know, another tool in my toolbox to take out and help other people with. And it's just like I found my purpose finally.
Something that I guess I want people to know, and you don't compare yourself to like your traumas. Like you can drown in 6 inches of water, or you can drown in a mile deep of water. You may look at your trauma and go, well, this is fucking nothing compared to Paul's. It doesn't fucking matter. Trauma is trauma. You can't compare. And if you need healing, you fucking need healing. So, you know, you don't have to have the trauma that you had to turn shit around right away.
So something I skipped over, part of this whole healing path, I was up on a ladder at work and I was listening to this podcast, and the dude's name's Cody Alford, and he's a retired MARSOC Marine, which is like a SOCOM Special Operations Marine, who they're pretty elite. They're fucking badasses, right? So I'm listening to this dude's story, and he's sharing it's like a 6-hour long podcast, dude. And he's sharing all about his combat stuff, and then he starts talking about his path to healing. And I'm like, whoa, dude, like, hold on a minute. And in that moment, like, I blew this guy's phone up, dude. I was like, I got his Instagram, I got his email, I got every contact, and I'm like, we gotta talk. Like, I'll fucking pay you for your time. I just started railing this guy's line, and finally he picked up the phone and he's like what? What do you want, man? No, he's so cool. I hired him as a personal coach, and he taught me. He's like, dude, he's like, trauma's trauma, bro. He's like, stop comparing your trauma. He's like, it don't matter if you're me stacking bodies on a battlefield or if you're a kid who's got daddy issues. How does it affect you? And how it affects us was the fucking same. You know what I mean? And then through that, like, I work a lot with veterans. I work a lot with rape victims and things of that nature. And it doesn't matter what the trauma is. And everybody wants to compare, like, oh, it wasn't as bad as yours, or it wasn't this. And it's like, it doesn't matter, dude. Like you said, you can drown in 6 inches of water. You can drown in a mile of water. And it's what it's doing to us that is the common denominator, you know, the disassociation, the addictions, you know, whether it be violence, porn, alcohol, drugs, shopping, food, like you're numbing, you know, like the result is often the same, and the path to healing is often the same. The traumatic event is the traumatic event. What happens after is the trauma. The comparison needs to stop. It really does. And like you said, you can't learn everything from books, and to be able to have like the relatability, I think, of knowing that, hey, I was fucked up because things happened, and I changed my life because I wanted to give my kids something better than I had.
Thank you so much for that, Paul. You know, you've got a pretty interesting story, and I appreciate you telling it. And I appreciate you telling it on my podcast. If you don't know, Paul has also been on Soft White Underbelly. It's a very popular YouTube show, as well as some other podcasts. I got introduced to Paul through a mutual friend, Christina Makwa, who was she was on an episode not too long ago. So thank you for doing that, Christina. And thank you all for listening. Now, if you could just do me a wonderful favor and rate and review the podcast, let other people know about it. Make sure to check out Todd and Tazzy Tuesdays. Those are the Tuesday episodes of Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, where I speak to my good friend Taz Norris, stand-up comedian, all-around super cool dude. And check out www.bunnyhugspodcast.com, where you can find things like merch, my children's book that I wrote, buy me a coffee, stuff about me and the podcast, you know, a website. Thank you so much for listening. Keep listening. So many wonderful guests and episodes coming up. And until next time, please remember to make your beds and take your meds. Bye.